Welcome to Raising Confident Readers, the Vision Reading Academy podcast, where science meets story and reading takes on a whole new dimension. I'm Crystal, founder of Vision Reading Academy and a research scientist with a passion for decoding how the brain and eyes work together to unlock learning. Around here, we don't do fluff. We dive into real strategies, real results, and the fascinating science behind how kids learn to read, think, and thrive. This isn't vision therapy, and we're not handing out prescriptions, but we are breaking down brain-based tools and research-backed methods that actually help. So whether you're a parent, educator, or just wildly curious about how vision connects to learning, you're in the right place. Let's get nerdy, let's get practical, and most of all, let's get kids thriving. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Raising Confident Readers. I'm happy you're here. We have another fantastic guest here with us. Her name is Gayle Walker. She is an amazing craniosacral therapist, and I find her amazing. I think that she is incredible with her knowledge and what she has to offer to everybody out there that goes to see her and her amazing healing abilities. And I wanted to bring her on today because there is such a connection between craniosacral therapy and the eyes, because again, like we talk about all the time in our podcasts, it's beyond the eyes. When there's something that is going on with ocular motor function, we often see many times that it has to do with there's more of a root cause and it goes beyond the eyes and it's not just directly with the eyes. So with that being said, Gail, welcome. Why don't you start off a little bit by telling us about yourself and your background and how you came to be where you're at now?
I started in this kind of work in bodywork since 2010. I became a massage therapist after a lot of years of doing oil and gas accounting. I just switched directions and I decided to become a massage therapist. And shortly after that, like within a year, I discovered craniosacral therapy. I realized that with a lot of my clients that they were coming back with the same things over and over and over again. And they were coming for massage therapy, which is wonderful for nervous system regulation, but it wasn't lasting. There wasn't a lot of movement there. So even though it provided lasting relief, I wasn't satisfied as a massage therapist to help my clients just that far. And so when I discovered Cranio, it really struck a chord with me that it could go a lot deeper than just the surface level touch healing.
Fantastic. Okay, so for those who have never heard of craniosacral therapy, how do you explain it to someone who's completely new to it?
The elevator's pitch is it's a light touch therapy that works mainly with the central nervous system. It works with down regulating the nervous system. It is a lot deeper than that. When we downregulate the nervous system, then we can find where within the body there are restrictions that may not feel like they have anything to do with what a person is experiencing. It is not a massage and it's not a head rub. It's not a head massage, although it can feel as relaxing as that. It goes a lot deeper and it's a lot lighter touch. So Cranio is working with the central nervous system. And the second component of that is working with the emotions and how we store emotions or unexpressed emotions within the nervous system. So it's technical. So I know all about the cranium and the nervous system, the central nervous system, and a lot about the fascia. And then a lot of it's also emotional.
Fantastic. Yes, Gail has actually put me to sleep several times on her table. So she's just released all of that nervous system built up and has put me into that parasympathetic rest, relax, digest state. And it's been wonderful. So there's been times where I've gone into Gail and I'm like, all right, Gail, it's time for my nap. Because she just releases and it's fantastic. And I love it. It's amazing. Okay, Gail. So when most people think of eye problems, they only think about the actual eyeballs, but eyes are connected to so much more. Can you explain that relationship with what your knowledge is and what you know and how there is that connection with the eyes?
Well, the eyes are vascular. So everything in the cranium is very vascular. The eyes are very vascular and they have also nerves, cranial nerves that are attached to them. And not only are they vascular, but they're seated within the position of the head where near the sphenoid. And the sphenoid is a bone in the head that can get off kilter. So, how's craniosacral therapy related to the vision or vision balance? And that is when that sphenoid is off, it's off balance. It's called the rudder of your head. When it's off balance, then our body and our positioning of our body and our cranium torque a little bit. And when they torque, that actually makes it so that the eyes can see. And when the head is torqued, so the eye is balanced with the horizon, then your hips are going to torque as well. So your hips are going to torque in the opposite direction. And so that's how it's related to eyes. I hope that answered your question.
No, that's great. So let's go a little bit further. So when the sphenoid is off, then everything is off kilter. That's when you then start seeing fascia issues. That's when you start seeing neck, jaw issues, and the nervous system starts ramping up and getting more into that sympathetic response. Is that kind of where that happens, where it's full circle? Everything just starts ramping up because the sphenoid is off?
Yeah, and it doesn't, I mean, the question is what comes first? Was it the sphenoid that's off? Was it the hips? Was it off? Was it fascial tension in the cranial system in the cranium? Was it fascial tension that was pulling that could have been applying a little minor pressure on maybe those ocular nerves, the ocular orbit, the fascia surrounding the muscular tissue surrounding the eyes? We really don't know what the origin of it is. There can be so many. It could be birth related trauma. It could be just emotional trauma. It could be accidents. There's a plethora of things that it could have originated from. So we try to address what we find when a person comes into the office. We try to address what we find. So do we know? No, we really don't know where it begins.
I want to follow up with that because you started talking about birth. And one of the
Mhm.
questions that I talk about in our intake form whenever we bring in new students into our program is I ask them, how was the birth? How was the
Yeah.
birth of your child? Because I really do know that there is that connection there. Gail and I have had previous calls and we've talked quite a bit. I have gone to Gail quite a few times, and quite a few times babies have come up and how magical Gail is with babies. But beyond that, Gail helped my daughter. She had severe midline tension that caused her to show a grade 3 severity of a tongue tie. I took her to Gail and she worked her magic. And when I then went back to the dentist, it was barely a grade 1 tongue tie. So and this was my daughter at this point. I had had revisions done 3 other times before I finally found Gail, and each revision reattached because of that tension that was there.
Yeah.
So, when we think about it with babies and birth and how birth can affect them, and my daughter's birth, it was pretty cut and dried. She was born without any complications during labor. There was only a slight lip that I had on my cervix, and the midwife was able to push that out of the way, and then she was born smoothly and perfectly. It wasn't a very fast birth. It wasn't anything else like that, but yet she still came with a lot of tension with her. And so when that tension, it started surfacing and I started noticing issues like with nursing. And when she started crawling, she would crawl where her cross crawl would be flat handed on one side, and on her right hand, she would crawl with a fist. And so I knew that there was that tension there, but I didn't know that Gail existed. So beyond that, the way that our history of our lives go can affect our future and what happens in our future and how our bodies are going to react with history and what happened back in the past. So, with that being said, Gail, where is your thought on releasing that tension right away from a newborn baby?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite subjects. From a newborn baby, we don't know what's going to happen. New parents often have the indicator that something's wrong, like with tongue tie. They're having difficulty feeding, they have difficulty being comfortable in their bodies, they have reflux, they're just uncomfortable. They're just uncomfortable little babies, and you can tell. And so, from the newborn perspective, what's happening there is definitely fascial strain. Now, the variables are what kind of nutrition did the mother have when she was pregnant? what was she experiencing emotionally when she was pregnant with the baby? Was there any losses? Was there stress? Was there financial strain? Was there a divorce or a split up? So there's all kinds of variables that will affect how that baby develops in utero. And then there's birth trauma. And so a lot of parents will come in and they'll say, well, there was nothing really going on. And then we'll find out later that the mother was suffering from lifelong depression. And so that's the variable also in there. So emotionally, we don't know really what's going on from the newborn perspective. It's good to get a child in there before you find out, because those problems are just going to become more and more strain. It's going to strain the family more and more. And that baby's going to learn habits that will work against them in trying to get them fed and get them the proper nutrition. But yeah, from a newborn's perspective, there's a lot of fascial strain going on there. And fascial strain is really, really interesting. You can have a fascial strain in your right hip in utero, and it'll manifest in maybe the left shoulder, the right shoulder, the other hip, and then maybe that left shoulder will go right on up to maybe the right sphenoid. So they all connect. All this fascial strain, it connects to each other. So just because you get a baby in there and they're not showing signs of reflux, it doesn't mean it's not going to come. It just means that those systems haven't developed enough. The baby hasn't grown enough to be able to manifest that yet. That's why it's good to get him checked out before problems even start developing, because the craniosacral therapist can actually see, oh, there's fascial strain here on the right, there's midline fascial strain, there's definitely lip tie, buccal ties going on. So we can manage that throughout the system through the whole body treatment.
And when that doesn't happen, then you can then start seeing some things later on. Like my daughter, I have her in the program. It's my second daughter, and she is now part of our program because she started having that ocular teaming issues that were
Yeah,
happening. And I know that it was directly related to all of that fascial tension
yeah,
that she has grown up with for many years of her life. And I know that I still need to take her back into you. I know that we are not finished with her, but you have you released, I want to say, a lifetime of tension, but I know she still has more that's in there. And so being able to have the possibility of getting rid of that tension when she's young and there's not as much that's there that has grown over the years because the tension is still there. And then the domino effect of more things being
right.
affected and everything else is huge. And so when Gail and I were having our conversation before our pre-call, if you want to call it was an amazing conversation. There were so many things that we talked about, and the whole time we were like, why are we not recording this? Because this is incredible. One of the things that Gail was talking about is she's like, I would love to be able to make it so that these children don't have the issues later on in life. And so, Gail, talk a little bit about your hopes and dreams of what you want to create to be able to make it more accessible for parents to be able to have access to craniosacral therapy.
And
Hey guys, before we continue, I want to let you know that for a limited time, Vision Reading Academy is offering free assessments for children who are struggling with reading or learning challenges. If you've been wondering why school feels harder than it should for your child, this is a great opportunity to get clarity and a plan. Visit visionreadingacademy.com to book your free assessment before our spots fill up. Now back to the episode.
I'd like just getting the word out there that there's this kind of therapy, and that possible problems that they could encounter may be alleviated if they just bring a newborn in as a routine right after they're born. So within the first couple weeks, while they're pretty new, fresh out of the womb, is the best time to do it, because you're avoiding so many things, especially the feeding problems. And so lactation consultants are a really good go-to. They're to determine what kind of feeding problems there are, but they can't really address unless they are being given the advice to go get a tongue tie clipped. And they can't do a lot in helping a baby when they're so tight, when their fascia is so tight. So my dream is to have a newborn clinic especially designed to see infants and babies up to 6 months. The older they get, the harder it is to treat them. And what my protocol is, I have them come in, do the evaluation, do the treatment on the baby, but I'm also educating parents as to what to do at home because these therapies can't be done once every 2 weeks. They have to be done 5 times a day. So I train the parents on what to do. Education for medical providers, too. We all have something to offer, and this is just another thing to offer. And just based on what I've experienced with clients, they are very grateful and wish that they had this kind of therapy for their previous children that had the similar problems because it does eliminate, if a person can get craniosacral therapy when they're just babies, they will have eliminated lifetime problems. And maybe for some children, as they're growing, they might need check ins once every 6 months, check ins if their fascial tension is severe, like what you do. Those kinds of check ins, they need to relieve the fascia elsewhere in the body that may have satellite tendrils that are affecting the ocular coordination. It's as children grow, they still need to have regular checkups and treatments.
Absolutely. So, one of the conversations that I was recording with a medical massage therapist, Dawn, and Gail also knows Dawn. One of the things that we were talking about in that episode was how the tension that is happening in the children now, there is a lot that has to do with the technology and them being on screens and how they are bringing their heads down or how they're even laying on their bellies and holding their heads up with that tension like that. How would craniosacral therapy connect? How would there be a connection there with that as far as with ocular motor function and the fascial tension and everything else? Do you find that there's any kind of connection there with screens for you? Have you seen a difference in children now versus when you very first started?
Yes, but it's not really on a physical level, it's more on an emotional level.
Okay.
Definitely a disconnection there
Okay.
with children, with being in touch with their bodies. When they're newborn, they don't even have an identity. Their identity is, their life is reflected back to them through their mothers, through their caretaker's eyes. And so when we put a screen in front of their face, we are also teaching them that the world is reflected to them through that screen. So, what I have found with children, especially when they're hitting junior high school, there's that disconnection between the reflection of the outside world reflecting to them their identity and their own in touchness with their body, if you will. How are they feeling? So what does it feel like to be in their body? So what I'm finding more, not so much a physical, but it's an emotional detachment that's happened there where they're not as in touch with their bodies, not even as much as littler children are in touch with their bodies and their emotions. They're detaching from connection a lot earlier in life than they used to.
That's incredible that you say that because there has been, and many of the other coaches have talked about it as well. The older that our students are, when we bring them in, the less of a connection that they have where they can't tell you what they're feeling in their body. We have them do a certain exercise where they are putting their hands over their eyes, and we want them to be able to just relax and focus and feel their eyes on their palms of their hands. And a lot of them struggle simply with that because they don't have that proprioception anymore. They don't have that ability for their bodies to communicate with themselves, to know what's happening in their own bodies. So that's incredible that you did that because we are seeing that connection in real time in our program. And it's puzzling to us, but it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. That is where that is coming from. It's the screens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's screens and the detachment or the lack of connection between what the screens and what's happening in their personal lives, in their home lives. And so that's the second component to what I do. It's physiologic, absolutely. But when the emotions are involved, like connection with their bodies, connection with the outside world, connection with what's real, what they can see, what they can touch, smell, taste, when that connection is lacking. And so the second part of this therapy is getting in touch with what it feels like to be in your body with as much objectivity as we can elicit for a child that's not so emotionally charged. Our phones, for us adults too, are taking away our ability for us to decide how we want to feel about things. Those are being decided for us, and we don't even know it. So, again, seeing children, that's why I love to work with families because I'm working with the whole family system. And so, our family system is like a family fascia. We're connected, some loosely, some more. That Venn diagram is merged into each other more than it should be. So what you're saying is similar across the line that what everybody's seeing in our practice is the detachment or the lack of connection with the mind, body, spirit. And so the reading thing is just a symptom. Not being able to track the imbalance of the eye alignment is just another symptom of this kind of detachment that we're experiencing in the world, and especially families and individuals that are connected to technology. I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And I believe that 100%. I feel that there is a huge connection. And it's interesting where I've noticed that in my own students that I've had, students that have more of a calm home life, have parents that are more involved, the ones that are usually sitting in sessions with them, that they have both the mother, father, parental figures in their life, that connection. The energy of the home is quieter. They usually are able to sit through sessions better with us. They usually excel through the program faster with us because they have that connection. And one of the things that we tell the parents right out the gate is we say, hey, when we are on sessions with the students, we want a supportive caregiver there because we believe 100% that when you have the child there that has that supportive member there with them, they are going to have better success because they are going to have that rock that's there for them, that they have that connection with them, that their parent is there to support them and help them along the way through this journey. And I think a lot of it has to do with more on that emotional, more on that energetic side. Yes, of course, helping them be able to do their massages and be able to press on their right acupressure points and be able to do all of that. That's great. That's fantastic. We want to be able to have that as well. But to be able to have that energetic connection, I believe, plays a huge role in this as well.
Yeah, it does. I agree.
Okay, there have been some students that I have said to you, Gal, we don't need to go into names or anything else like that, but we work with children whose eyes don't move efficiently enough for reading, obviously. From your perspective, what kinds of restrictions do you commonly see that could contribute to this?
Definitely. Yeah. There's temporal bone restrictions, the frontal bone restrictions. Yeah. There could be stuck between each plate of our cranium. There's sutures, we call them sutures, and they are connected by connective tissue. And so maybe during the birthing process, any one of these plates can directly or indirectly related to one another. So when there's misalignment in those plates, that throws everything else off and that could contribute to physiologically. And then at the same time, then you've got that fascial strain. So if they have fascial strain when they're born, that's pulling. That's a fascial strain. Imagine a satellite fascial strain, like a ball somewhere in your body, and it's kind of congealed fascia, a little bit twisted, and it's got little satellite tendrils. And so they're kind of stretching satellite, and some satellite tendrils are a little bit more fibrous and dehydrated, and they will pull on that fascial strain, maybe somewhere in the cranium that could be pulling those sutures, pulling and torquing those sutures in just a direction, just enough so that it pulls off of the alignment with the horizon, if you will. So, yeah, the physicality of it is that can happen. Again, birth defects, it could happen. There's a lot of talk on the proper methylation of folate when the baby's being developed in utero that we believe may be causing increased fascial strain that babies are born with. So, there's some things that legitimate things that they're actually born with is causing this stuff, physiological occurrences that are happening that they are born with that affects healing.
Okay, so I'm going to nerd out with you a little bit. So, from just your perspective and what you have seen throughout the years, MTHFR gene is newer on the horizon as far as the discovery and people finding out about it, and there being the genetic testing for it that people can easily test their genetics and figure out if they have any MTHFR gene mutations or anything else like that. Have you noticed, because it's becoming more popular, have you noticed clients that have the MTHFR having more of these issues, the fascial strains, the stuff like that. Midline defects are obviously part of MTHFR, which could be fascial strain in general, right? Have you seen
Yeah.
more of that now that
Only
that's become more common?
yes and no. It's not like a question that I have on my intake form because it's so ambiguous. So many people don't even know what that is. So I wouldn't know. If they mention it, then I'll take a note that this is a consistency. And so that being said, yes, with those people that mention it, they generally have some kind of lifelong issue that has been happening all their life. That when you have a lifelong issue, you don't know it's an abnormality. You just think it's something about you. You don't think that it's not normal. So it's really still new. People don't know a lot about it. And most people don't know how knowing that will improve or change the way they live their life or their lifestyle. So they're just not as much known out about it. So that's a long way to answer yes and no. The clients that say that they have this mutation, they wouldn't be there if they didn't have something along those lines. But again, so little is known about it. And these kinds of new things aren't well known for us to be able to place a label on a lifelong anomaly that we've carried all of our lives. So it's really hard to know.
That's great. So, have you seen improvements in eye tracking or visual function with any of your clients that have complained about that? I know that we have many students that come to us that they'll say that they complain of daily headaches,
Yeah.
recurring headaches, things like that, that it can be tied back to eye strain, that they're not able to make that eye teaming come together and the tension comes from them trying to read and they can't read. So, have you seen changes?
Well, yes. For instance, headaches are a common thing that I see people for. And so when they start to notice a difference, and it's usually pretty quick, they notice the lack of headache for one thing. And then they notice clear eyesight, clear vision, literally like their vision went was poor before and it actually improved because now they're getting the cranial nerve stimulation and they're getting all the blood supply that they need. And then also when the fascial tension is released, then yes, everything settles back into homeostasis.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Even the minute amount, we don't even hardly dip into craniosacral therapy with the stuff that we do with any kind of massages and acupressure releases and everything else like that. But even with the minute releases that we have our students do in the program, we see very similar effects
Yeah.
with that. And it's incredible to be able to see that connection and it comes full circle. And that will be in glasses and they'll go for a follow-up appointment with their optometrist. And the optometrist is like, you don't need glasses anymore. We
Yeah.
can take those off. Keep doing what you're doing. Type of mentality, which is huge. And I will never claim that our program can get rid of your glasses. That is not something that we will ever claim. We do not practice optometry here. We don't want to dive into that at all. But with that connection piece, that can show you that sometimes where the symptom comes from may not be the root of where the problem is at. And that's what our entire motto of our program runs on is that we may have a generalized symptom where the child is struggling with their reading or they have pretty good reading, but they're struggling with daily headaches or they're struggling with their comprehension or something along those lines. And they come to us and we let them know that this may be the symptom, but that's not the root cause. That may not be what's going on. And we just do a simple assessment, be able to look at them and see if it's deeper than the symptom that they are coming to us saying that that's what it is. And we
Mhm.
don't give them a full on diagnosis because, again, we're not a medical program, but we are able to then take them through what we have found scientifically. And we're able to sometimes change their entire lives, which is incredible.
Oh, and it can be so simple.
It is.
It doesn't have to be this long, complicated visiting, going from doctor to doctor. It can be just as simple as some minor adjustments to the musculature and the soft tissue and the bony structure and what you're providing for them. Just these simple suggestions. That's all it can be. It doesn't need to be this big, long, dramatic thing. It can be very simple.
I agree. I agree. Hey, just a quick heads up. Everything we share here at the Vision Reading Academy podcast is based on real life experience and solid research, but we're not a medical program. We don't do vision therapy or optometry, and nothing we say should be taken as medical advice. If you've got concerns about vision or health, definitely check with a licensed professional. That's amazing. What signs would make you think that this child may benefit from craniosacral therapy?
Discomfort in the body, so many things. If the child appears agitated, fidgety, just not able to focus attention, and so many children can't. And we have a lot of diagnoses for these kinds of things, but a lot of things is just nervous system downregulation. Like really downregulate the nervous system. Then once the nervous system's downregulated, then you can get a clearer picture of where fascial strain is. And that downregulating of the nervous system also helps a child recalibrate. Again, bring downregulating the nervous system. They would automatically recalibrate all your body systems emotionally and physically and mentally. They're designed to be in homeostasis. So downregulating the nervous system with cranio anyway helps the child to be able to recalibrate and to be able to focus, to be able to have a little bit more mental clarity, to be able to communicate what they need. The benefits are really limitless because one downregulation means that now here they're in the area of focus and clarity. They have focus and clarity where they didn't have it before, where they have focus and clarity. Now they have the communication skills and they've got the patience. So craniosacral therapy is going to solve things that really need to be corrected. There's absolutely things that have to be corrected, like what you're doing. Maybe the child has other things systemically that are happening too that are contributing to the agitation or the lack of focus and clarity. But definitely down-regulating nervous systems help us see clearly at the bottom of a sandy bucket. Once the mud settles, once the sand settles, then we can separate the body from the rest of it. We can separate and have a little bit more clarity once that system is down-regulated. But when everything is in upheaval, it's really hard to find what's going on.
Absolutely. Do you know anything about retained primitive reflexes?
Retained primitive reflex. I don't really.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if you gave me an example of it, I probably could see it, but
So
I probably understand
oral
it.
reflex, the startle
Yeah,
reflex,
right.
right?
Yes.
Those. So those reflexes, they then once they integrate out into lifelong postural reflexes, which then you're actually working with postural muscles. But when you have the retained primitive reflexes of like the Moro reflex, the TLR reflex, the Landau reflex, all of those reflexes that the baby is born with, that they develop in utero, and then they're born with to then be able to, as they meet their milestones, they integrate those out. What we're noticing is a lot of that same type of thing, that when they have those retained primitive reflexes, that the nervous system is in hyperdrive in that sympathetic response. And then you then start seeing that they lack those postural responses, those postural reflexes. So you see that weakened child, the weakened posture. You see that they can't do simple things like hold their head up or be able to lay on their belly and be able to raise their head and their chest off the table. Those type of things you start noticing stems from those retained primitive reflexes that are there. And because of there being that connection with the retained primitive reflexes, the central nervous system, and the vestibular system, it then connects directly with the eyes. And the eyes having that teaming ability.
Well, what I can tell you that I know, that because I've been doing this just long enough to be observant, what I can tell you about a condition like that is that our bodies are emotional bodies. They're in motion all the time. We have emotion going through our body 24/7. We have retained emotions going through our body. That means retain unexpressed emotions. Now, I think if we all understood how integral and just how connected the mother child connection is in utero, and then also things that are passed on through the DNA, we'd understand a little bit more about emotions. We do not study emotions in this country, in this universe, really. Emotions have been the one thing that has been bypassed. People that have high emotions are labeled mentally ill or whatever. They're labeled, but yet we don't understand anything about emotions. So this is what I have to say about that is there's a lot of energy in a child's body when they're born. They're carrying a lot of what their mother experienced and even through the DNA. So epigenetics is just barely being scratched upon right now. what I see in clients is so much retained emotions that causes the lack of development in other areas of their life. So I don't really understand as a therapist how I could elicit a change in that other than connecting with that emotional body, with that emotional person, that part, even as an infant. And so, what we see when we see families working together, when I have a baby on a mom or dad's lap and we're talking about something in their life that's going on, might not even be about pregnancy or birth or delivery or anything. It might be something between the mom and dad that's been going on. You will actually see an unwinding when the parents are talking and they're moving, and you will see the baby mimic the parent. So that's how integral this emotional connection is. So we don't really have a depth of understanding. So, in my personal opinion, you can't exclude the emotionality of the connection between the mother and the baby.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That strikes me as very obvious and apparent when there's primitive reflexes being retained and the child isn't developing. That to me means that there's some emotional retention there, an expressed emotional retention there, some kind of trauma, something that's being held on that would cause that. We can't leave emotion out of any kind of healing situation, any of it.
Yeah. Okay. So with that being said, when I talk to, and we will do an entire other episode on retained primitive reflexes, and I will go into it a little bit more of the science behind it. But when I talk to the parents about retained primitive reflexes, I say, okay, so the child may be developing perfectly fine. They may be meeting their milestones perfectly
Mhm.
fine. And then they have some kind of mental trauma, emotional trauma, or physical trauma that happens to them. The body brings back those retained
Yeah.
reflexes to protect them. And then that's when rapid fire, the parent goes, oh, this happened to them, this happened to them, this happened, this makes sense. Okay, this makes sense. Okay, I get it now. Yes, this happened at this age. And then that's when they regressed back in from potty training and they no longer were able to go on the toilet and they started wetting the bed again. And the list goes on and on. And it's because of there being an actual emotion, a trauma, something that
Mhm.
happened to them. So I'm with you right there. I think 100% that it has a lot to do with the emotion, our bodies, and the emotional state that our bodies are in
Yeah.
at all times.
Yeah. I'll leave as adults, we will have a primitive reflex that will come to protect ourselves too. We curl our bodies. Why? Because we're protecting those internal organs. We have primitive reflexes to keep us alive. It's when there's an emotional trauma that the resurgence of that primitive reflex comes up. It is absolutely an experiential trauma that has happened that has not been completely released.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I said that the other one. This is fantastic. Okay, if a parent is already doing the exercises that we do in our program for a
Mhm.
child, could reducing tension in the body make those exercises more effective?
Oh,
So
absolutely.
much like reducing tension, like with you, with the craniosacral therapist.
Yes, yes, even if it's not in our state. Yes, yes, absolutely. They can get treatments for their children just to downregulate that nervous system to make them so that they're more comfortable in their bodies, they feel safer in their bodies, they feel safer and more trusting in their environment. So, yeah, it's not just an all-in-one thing. There's other therapies that can also absolutely help bring a child to feel that safety in their bodies.
That's great. What's one misconception people have about craniosacral therapy?
That it's like a massage or something. It's like body work. It's not so much a misconception, just the name alone, craniosacral, has to do with the cranium and the sacrum. Is it just the head then? Or are you getting a head rub? What's going on with that? That's the misconception is generally, like I said, people that find us, they're looking for headache relief because cranium and the headache and all that, but it's so much more. So that's the misconception. We just work with people with headaches. We don't. We work with people that have everything. It's nervous system work. And so it works with everything. There's one or two contraindications, the craniosacral therapy, and it's just a couple of the protocols that we have. So that being said, if a person comes in with a contraindication for craniosacral therapy, it's only a hand position on the cranium that has to be avoided. But generally, it's not contraindicated for anything.
So
Yeah.
essentially, everybody should be going to craniosacral therapy.
I mean, it's such a good body maintenance. I have a lot of clients that come in once a month, and the aging population is really loving it because it really helps. It adds to their vitality. And then for younger kids that are having problems, regular maintenance because they're growing. And then they're growing if they're having issues, ongoing issues like Kids that are autistic, they really benefit through it. There's no contraindications for craniosacral therapy. We treat what we find. So we don't have an agenda.
And the help is endless.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, I have one last question and then we will finish up. If you could leave parents with one message about the connection between the body, the brain, and the eyes, what would it be?
The connection between the body, the brain, and the eyes. Yeah, it's all connected. You can't separate out. You can't separate body, brain, and eyes. That's why it's so laughable that people go to an orthopedic surgeon, orthopedics, or somebody for just the eyes when it really doesn't have anything to do with the eyes. It might have to do with a spinal injury, or it might have to do with a fall that they fell on the stairs last week. Everything's all connected. So maybe I'm just advertising how important the work that I do is because it's all connected. And so the body, the brain, and the eyes, they're not just one, it's all one unit.
Yeah,
Full body, it's all one unit.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. All right, Gail. Well, thank you. I appreciate this. This was amazing. For any of our listeners that are in Utah and they would like to get a hold of you and make an appointment with you, how do they find you?
Oh, just go to my website. It's www.heal, Heal with WITH Gail, GAIL, all one word, healwithgail.com.
Perfect. And I will put this in the show notes so that they can get in contact with you. All right. Well, Gail, I'm sure that we will probably talk soon and may have you on another episode because this was fascinating. And I'm sure that we could nerd out all day long talking about so many different things.
Yeah, the whole thing encompassed is my deal. The whole body, mind, spirit, that's where I'm at, all over it.
I love it. Me too. So thank you, Gail. You have a wonderful
Thanks,
rest of your
Crystal.
day and I will
You
talk to you
too.
later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for tuning in to Raising Confident Readers, the Vision Reading Academy podcast. If today's episode got your gears turning, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'm Crystal, founder of Vision Reading Academy, reminding you that learning isn't one size fits all, and every child deserves a custom game plan. Until next time, keep it curious, keep it science-based, and as always, keep helping those kiddos thrive.